Patter, let's get at her. It is another episode of the Manely Broncos Podcast. We are excited because it is the first time in quite a while where we have actually had the Jordan Lopez of Broncos Ave on with us. And, we didn't want him falling asleep on stream last night, so that's really, to be completely honest, that is the reason why we pushed it to Thursday, because we didn't want him falling asleep and, waking up very groggy and stuff for his 6 o'clock class. By the way, I don't know about you, Brandon, but could you imagine doing a 6 o'clock class in the morning?
Dude, I didn't even let myself sign up for 8 o'clock classes. I made that mistake my freshman year and never again.
Yep, and now
I didn't get out of bed until at least 9.
So
you're a senior in what?
I'm a senior now, and I'm making that mistake. So,
yeah. Although now I have a job where I have to work at 7 a.m. So
yeah.
I didn't learn my lesson apparently.
But no, thanks for hopping on, Jordan. How you doing, buddy? You doing good?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm excited to be back. I love NFL draft time. It's, I think, the best time of the year, especially for NFL, just because there's so much to talk about. The Denver Broncos are in a interesting situation with their team needs and all that. I know we're going to get into it, but between quarterbacks, wide receivers, and a lot more, the Broncos are going to need a very good draft to get right back in the thick of things.
Yeah. A couple of people already chiming in early. Obviously, Big Mike, that would be Miner's Muse now, by the way, on Twitter.
Yep.
He is no longer a fan of Greg Dulcich and the Croatian sensation.
You might be less of a fan of him after my tight end that I talk about.
Yeah.
So.
But yeah, Big Mike chimes in, and Ty says, "You're welcome, Jordan."
What is he?
I'm guessing he's referring to not recording the what is it, the MMA pod, right? Is that
our FKTC pod? I think we would actually be recording it tonight, or it would have been last night. So depending on the schedule, but yeah, thank you, Ty, for letting me do this.
He is Jordan is a utility player. He's a very versatile player. He's basically, like, in football terms, he would be called a dual threat. Is kind of like what it would best way to describe him. What's up, Bronco Danny? What's up, man? From New Jersey. Okay.
Wow.
So like
9:30 there. Respect.
Is. Well, to be fair, I think it is also like 9:30. Where Jordan is at too. So
yeah, but I'm respecting the viewer more than Jordan.
Wow.
Just kidding. Thanks, Jordan.
No, but thanks for hopping. Thanks for hopping in, Danny, and obviously we all know though that the Midwest, right at 7:30, if you will, that is the time currently. That is the best time. That is the best time zone. Yeah, we would be remiss if we didn't mention Big Mike being in the East Coast too, being down there over. I want to say it's like in like the Mass, the UMass area. So, because I think he likes to give us, like, every once in a while, like those New England, the Patriots tidbits, if you will. So, thanks a lot for chiming in, chat. As you can tell, Twitter comments are showing up on the stream. It's one of the newest things that StreamYard has added, which is fantastic.
That's wild.
So like
it's 9:30 for Big Mike too. Damn, we all late. Sorry, go ahead.
So basically, anybody that is on Twitter, you can now chime in. So basically, the days of Periscope, where your comments from Twitter and stuff will be actually shown. It's great now.
Well, your day's here too until 4 days ago.
I feel like the best way to describe this class, just in general from the offensive standpoint, and this is something that I'm sure you've been a big proponent of, Jordan, and it's something that Brandon and I have been mentioning on numerous occasions. But like, if there was ever an opinion that we would rather want them to go, it would be to rebuild almost like their entire offensive identity. And granted, we say it in correlation to building it around the quarterback that they will take or should take, either a pick 12 or, their first round quarterback, if you will. But like, just doing the smart thing and really building the offense, right? And I feel like in this particular draft class, there are a few position groups that are really, really deep this year, and one of them in particular may not necessarily, actually two of them in particular may not necessarily be, you know, by all means in the upper echelon of like wide receiver, offensive tackle, those certain groups, but running back is kind of quiet, but like there's certain guys in there that is, it may not necessarily be deep at the top, but it certainly
it's not top heavy, but there's some depth there.
But there's some pretty decent depth in the middle for running back, and then you get
which I love because I'm definitely team don't draft running back in the first round. Yeah, so I'm all in for this.
And then you get tight end, which is sort of in that same conversation, which is like, it's not even top heavy because it's all led by Brock Bowers, and then there's a drop off to Sanders, and then from Sanders it's another massive drop off to some of those other guys, but it's still kind of scrunched together as far as projects and developmental players with tight ends. So it's really going to be fun, kind of like taking a deep dive. But Jordan, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about the biggest position, of course, and maybe one of the positions that, frankly, is one that maybe they should strongly consider at pick 12, and that would be the wide receiver position. So who on in terms of a sleeper-ish, we'll just go first round. We'll just go kind of like by round. I feel like that's probably the good way to do this, is like, because if you're going to talk sleepers, let's go sleepers first round, sleeper second round, and then third round, fourth round, fifth round, or fifth or seventh round, or I should say fifth to sixth round, because at the seventh round point, you're kind of talking about darts, right? You're like, players that you're just kind of throwing darts for. You could probably make an argument for that maybe in round 6 too. But why don't you kind of lead it off, Jordan, in terms of just the first round?
So obviously with the first round, we have, wide receivers, like the top marquee wide receivers that are probably going to be gone by the time Denver is selecting at 12. So like we have like the Marvin Harrison Jr.'s of the world. Malik Neighbors will be gone by then. Who knows with Rome Odunze, but I'm pretty sure he will be gone by 12. Some guys that I like that could be a sleeper at 12 or just in general in the first round. I know Brian Thomas has been getting a lot of love lately, but I do feel like he is one of the better wide receivers that will be picked in the first round. I think he has a high upside. Yeah. He has great size and great speed. So I think he's been getting a little bit slept on. I think he should be a higher pick than what the general audience views him as. And then my favorite first round type wide receiver, since we're on the first round, Adonai Mitchell's by far my favorite in terms of first round prospects. I mean, if you want to talk about just a natural wide receiver in terms of route running, physicality, contested catches, creating separation, yards after the catch, like he has all of it. So in terms of sleeper in the first round, I'll go Brian Thomas, but Adonai Mitchell by far, I think is going to be and going to cement himself as one of the best wide receivers to come out of this draft class and out of the first round.
I mean, you're preaching to the choir. You and I've had that conversation, a few times. So obviously with AD Mitchell, but like, yeah, he is. I heard something just the other day. Actually, it may have been today with Brett Coleman, and they were talking about the wide receiver class, and they went to AD Mitchell. One of the comps that they had, and one of my favorite comps, of course, is CeeDee Lamb, for AD Mitchell. But the comparison that they made, or I thought, was actually, for the most part, pretty accurate. Because if you're going to say maybe, like a lower ceiling, or maybe like because like obviously CeeDee Lamb would end up being the higher ceiling, but George Pickens, I thought, was a really fun comparison for AD Mitchell, because I do think at times Mitchell is a bit inconsistent, but you turn his Alabama tape on when he was playing Alabama, and he was going up against both of those corners that are projected first round picks. Yeah. I mean, like he gave him the business in that game. And to a degree, if you're going to go off of like the Michael Penix situation and just go solely off of the Texas game, I mean, AD Mitchell, you go solely off of what you saw in that Alabama game, you're talking about a wide receiver that is frankly in that bunched up group with Brian Thomas, who is and you touched on it, like is sliding within that 12 to 15 range, and a guy that frankly could be I don't know how likely, but could be a Broncos draft pick at 12 if they decided to go, that route at 12. But yeah, I am very much a huge fan of AD Mitchell, and I think I just love his comparison to CeeDee Lamb, because I think the one catch that just really caught my eye that was just so CeeDee Lamb-esque was in the playoff game against Washington. It was the red zone catch where he adjusted his body midair. It was a great pass, obviously, by Ewers, but I mean, like, it was only the place where Mitchell could get it, and he adjusted midair and caught the ball. Like, that was just so, I guess you could say Pickens too, but like that was so CeeDee Lamb, in the air with how he went out and grabbed that ball.
I mean, Adani, like we talked about, and we've talked about it before. Like, I think AD Mitchell has it. Like, there's not a lot of wide receivers that you can very judge, like, just off of tape if he has it. But I do think Mitchell is that guy, and he's going to be that guy for whoever selects him. Between his releases, between, like I said, yards after the catch, I think is very underrated. He has great hands. And when we talk about catching in between the numbers, I mean, he was very, very good at that with Texas. I mean, he had 12 receptions on in routes. He caught 7 receptions on slants. I mean, the guy was a threat in the middle of the field. So the team's going to be very lucky with AD Mitchell.
What about you, Brandon? Where are you on AD Mitchell?
Oh, he's going in the first round. I would be shocked if he doesn't go in the first round.
No. We're just saying, like, do you put him in that sleeperish category? It's kind of like where we're going off of.
I don't personally, because I think if someone's going in the first round, I don't consider them a sleeper, and he's going in the first round, so I don't call him a sleeper. No, but I do think he's slightly forgotten a little bit, but I don't think he's. I think he's 100% going in the first round, so I don't consider him a sleeper, just personally. If you want to talk about who I think a sleeper is that could go in the first round, but has not really been projected to go in the first round, that's what I consider sleeper. Like, not someone who's obviously going in the first, but is kind of forgotten, although that is definitely AD Mitchell, is Ladd McConkey could go back into the first round. Yeah. He probably goes to the Chiefs, which I would hate with a burning passion. Like, that literally just makes too much sense, and I kind of hate it.
Actually, I actually have a fit for him.
If people don't know who that is, first of all, shame on you. But wide receiver from Georgia, dude's an absolute monster. Had an amazing Senior Bowl. I want him just for his name, but also he's a great wide receiver.
Well, I actually have a fit for him that's not Kansas City. I actually have a fit for I actually have a fit for him at another team at the back end of the first round, and that would be Baltimore. And
yeah, I thought you might say Baltimore.
And of course, with Todd Monken down there, and them needing a wide receiver, I wouldn't be surprised if they wanted to go, with the Lab. The only thing
Flowers is doing well for them, but like Rashad Bateman is kind of
he's not bad.
He's not bad, but he's definitely not as good as they expected him to be.
But the thing is, like, Baltimore's they're in a place where they could double dip at wide receiver, So I mean, like, so I wouldn't be surprised. Another, and we'll get to those wide receivers a little bit later. But yeah, McConkey, he's just fun. Like, I actually think it's crazy. I actually think that McConkey for the Broncos as a trade down candidate, as a wide receiver, he actually, I feel like, is a sneaky option that's not talked about enough, like, in terms of for the Broncos, because for what Sean Payton could do with a guy like McConkey, I mean, cool. Like, that would be so fun. Because, like, if you think about it too, and it's one of the reasons why, and we'll get to some of those later prospects, but it's one of the reasons why I'm thinking about, because obviously they signed Josh Reynolds, but like they signed Reynolds and you have Mims, and so I mean, if you get the chance to get a little bit more of a space creator to the along with Mims, you have almost best case scenario there.
There was a guy that I almost wanted to put in my list of wide receiver sleepers that
for the first
I want to talk about. No, everyone that I put on my list is like what I consider like a sleeper. I'm talking like late day 2, day 3, probably. Yeah. But there was a guy that I wanted to put on this list that I stopped myself from doing it primarily because of how similar he is to Marvin Mims. But maybe I'll talk about him when we get to later sleepers.
But to clarify, when we are saying sleeper, we're saying sleeper into the middle half of the first round. Like that's the only reason why we're having, possibly a conversation like that.
All right, to me that's not a sleeper, but I'll play around. I'll play along. I don't know. To me, if someone's going to the first round, they ain't a sleeper. But there's some surprises. There's just guys I think would surprise and go in the first round, and Ladd McConkey's one of them.
Yeah,
I think when we talk in terms of that,
all my sleepers are like
a
round 4 later.
Yeah,
probably round 5 later.
I would say like on a McConkey type, trying to like maybe sneaking in the first round. I know he hasn't been talked about much in the first round, barely even in the second, but I don't know where the love has gone, but I think Keon Coleman can be one of those guys. I really can. He has a great size.
What happened to him, Jordan? Because it was like I feel like the conversation went from at the beginning of the year. Like the conversation went at the beginning of the year to Marvin Harrison to Keon Coleman, and then because of Neighbors and Adunze, that conversation is now out the window, and you're talking about like a far more like almost like inconsistent at times, maybe with how people view Keon Coleman. So it's interesting. So why do you feel about Keon Coleman? Because I'm kind of with you. Like it feels almost like not to use that other comparison and name drop maybe another wide receiver that could be a sleeper, but his other teammate, Johnny Wilson, like just big body wide receivers.
It is a bit weird with Keon Coleman, and I'm even admitting that as a UM fan because I very much don't like FSU whatsoever. But Keon Coleman is a wide receiver that could be a big time playmaker, and I can see him going to a team like a Buffalo, right, with Josh Allen. I can see him thriving there. But I don't know where the love has gone.
You think he's the Diggs replacement?
He can. I mean, Keon Coleman has a very different skill set.
I was going to say they didn't really. They wouldn't have used him the same way, but
they won't use him the same way.
They need a playmaking wide receiver.
Yeah.
And I think Keon Coleman can be a playmaker just in a different way that Stephon Diggs was a playmaker. And I know Keon Coleman is not the fastest. Obviously, he's 6'4". He's a little bit over 210. But again, the love from Keon Coleman has faded away. Not understanding why, but I think it's just another assessment of how deep this wide receiver class is.
Yeah. Big Mike's spitting some fire takes in the chat here.
I mean, I feel like that
I'm curious to hear the reasoning here.
But I feel like the Chiefs are going to be taking wide receiver. Just the question is too. And Bronco Danny had another one that as far as a wide receiver that could slide into the first possibly would be a Troy Franklin. And if you are talking about possible nightmare scenarios, for the Chiefs, landing a wide receiver aside from a McConkey, Troy Franklin would be another one. Even a Xavier Worthy, right? That's another name that we mentioned A.D. Mitchell, but it's pure speed. Like it is pure speed for a guy like Xavier Worthy. Obviously, he broke the famous John Ross record, at the NFL Combine. He's a fun wide receiver. To think about like where Texas was as a wide receiving core, they actually went with maybe a very fascinating wide receiving core. Like they actually had CSU transfer Isaiah Nayor transfer to their program, and he was well regarded within that program. And then he injured his ACL, out for the year. Sarkisian loved him but I mean, like, and then like you get AD Mitchell and and Xavier Worthy that just took off, and it was just like, so it just goes to show you how talented that room with Worthy and Mitchell really are.
Hmm. I mean, I have some wide receiver sleepers, but they're not in the first round. Do you want me to say them now or wait?
Let's go to the second round.
Because one of them, they're not even in the second round. One of them is kind of similar to Keon Coleman. We'll get there. We'll get there.
Well, let's go to the second round, because I feel like if there is I will lead it off in the sense of because I just don't want people to take my guy, if you will. But he's a guy that I feel like he's one that could, if him sliding into the second round actually isn't going to be surprising to me. And he is a draft crush for me. And it's not Malachi Corley, because I know that we'll talk about Malachi Corley here, in a little bit. But Javon Baker. I love Javon Baker. I absolutely love Javon Baker. Like, you're talking about a guy that he's not a 6 foot, 4 wide receiver, 6'5" wide receiver, but and I'm not even comparing him necessarily to like a Jamar Chase per se, but like he's got that size, like just an absolute, like I want to say it's like 6 foot 6'1", like like wide receiver, like above 200 pounds, like he's physically built. And like he put up a lot of numbers. He may be the most consistent, maybe one of the more consistent wide receivers in that entire class, right? I mean, I don't think that you look at some of the numbers, like there was like, oh man, like of all the players I would love for the Broncos to just try and pry into that second round. It's one of the reasons why that huge gap between 12 and 76. We
don't have a second round pick right now.
Yeah, like it keeps me up at night. Let's just say that it keeps me up at night, knowing the fact that we don't have anything between 12 and 76. But man, I love Javon Baker. I love his game. He's Mr. Consistent. He may be Mr. Consistent of the entire draft. Not named like the neighbors and Adunze and no. As far as Debo, I would go more to another prospect who I just name dropped recently. That's the Broncos Danny's comment. But yeah, I know I'll go to you though, Jordan, because I know that you wanted to talk some more about Baker, but yeah, he is. And granted, he's not necessarily a huge love for obviously just me. He's a love for you and like almost Broncos Twitter. Like you talk to probably a fair amount of people that have done a lot of film study and stuff like that. They love Javon Baker as well.
So this was my guy. Like you want to talk about my guy in the draft?
Yeah,
it's AD Mitchell first, and then Baker is gonna be that guy. Like I'm absolutely in love with this guy. It would be such a blessing for him to go to Denver. Yeah. I know it's very unlikely because of that second round pick. Maybe we trade down, maybe we accumulate it somehow, some way. But if Javon Baker's wearing that Denver uniform, man, oh man, I'd be the first one to buy that uniform. Just talk about the size first. Pure 6'1", over 200, perfect size. I mean, when I look at wide receivers, just me personally, that's the size I'm looking for. And you're talking about he was number 1 in yards per reception, 3rd in yards after the catch per reception. I mean, all of his metrics from UCF were great.
You're saying first in yards per catch in the program at UCF? Because I was about to say he's second in FBS.
I'm seeing 21.9 for yards per reception.
Yeah, Chris Lewis beat him.
It's probably with the minimum snaps then.
You might be looking at minimum number of catches, but actually you stole what I was going to say, but you can go ahead.
That's right. That's right.
You meant in the program. I was like, oh, there's more than that.
No, but Baker is my guy. I think he has a lot of similarities to a Puka Nacua for me.
Yeah.
Because his run blocking is a work of art. But despite the run blocking, which I think is key to be a wide receiver and have great run blocking, but his route running's on point. His hands are nearly perfect. His releases against tight coverage is excellent, in my opinion. Catching the ball in tight spaces towards the sidelines, very good. His acceleration, everything, his footwork, release, run after catch. I think everything about Baker is awesome. He will be a treat for whoever drafts him, and that's my absolute darling of the draft is Javon Baker.
So some stats. His the outside left numbers for Baker is absurd. If any of you guys are subscribers to Pro Football Focus, obviously the grading system, as we've said, is flawed. But like, get this, like outside left, 12 of 19 for 451 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no interceptions thrown his way. That is from 20 and above. And then 10 to 20, 10 of 14, 223 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Both of those were very, very elite grades.
Yeah.
Like we're talking 99.9 and 98 grade on the outside left. So to everything that you talked about, Jordan, and him being a very strong asset, like on that outside, like you even go further too, like in the middle, like it's not necessarily like the 90s by any means, but he was still a reliable threat in the middle. And I think too, like the yards after catch, I feel like he's not any of those other guys per se, but like he's so smooth. Like he's not a running back necessarily after the catch, but like his yards after catch is just, he is smooth.
He's tough too. He's very, very tough. I mean, he has the size for it. So, but yeah, Baker is my absolute sleeper in this draft. I think regardless of position, I think if we talk about number one sleeper, for me at least, it'd be Javon Baker.
Who would, yeah, so obviously Jordan and I kind of stole each other's, if we'll pick with Brandon. What about you for the second round?
Again, the guys I want to talk about are way later than the second round.
We'll get there.
I didn't know we were going round by round. I didn't prepare that way. There's some guys that, so I don't know if this guy is going to go in the second round, although he probably should. And I've talked about him before. So I guess you could consider that a sleeper, but Jalen Polk from Washington.
Yeah.
Dude's just an absolute just machine. Like he goes up and gets the ball. He has ridiculous body control. He'll kind of reminds me of, I don't want to say reminds me of Cortland Sutton because I'm going to say that exact sentence later on down in the rounds here. But he basically just comes away with like any catch. He's one of those guys that he doesn't look open, but you throw him the ball and he somehow gets the ball. Like he's open, but he looks like he's completely covered. He's really good at keeping the ball away from defenders. Like he'll kind of catch it outside his frame and pull it in and then get up the field. He's not a fantastic blocker, but he's just get up and go. He's also a fantastic deep threat, as evidenced by what Michael Penix Jr. did with him. But I think Jalen Polk is someone who probably should be talked about more. Because once the ball's in the air, like you never know what's going to happen. He could come down with it. He could take it for a touchdown. It might look like the cornerback's going to pick it off and Jalen Polk somehow gets it and is on the ground and it's still their ball. Like he has a 30-yard reception. Is ridiculous.
We would be remiss too, like, and the three of us can talk about it, but we would be remiss if we didn't lump the other Washington wide receiver into that. Because like the Washington wide receiving core there was a reason why a lot of people had it as maybe the best wide receiving core in the entire country. Like, because Odunze got so much love, and rightfully so. I mean, the guy is, a tier, like maybe just a tier, like a small tier below Neighbors and Marvin Harrison Jr.
Well, Odunze is the reason that I say Polk is more of a sleeper because he's kind of easy to forget about because of how ridiculous Odunze was.
Yeah.
And the other just issue with Polk that kind of makes him, I think, less popular. He's not a speed guy. He's not jumping off the tape because he's leaving everyone 5 yards behind him in the dust. But Rome Odunze is ridiculous too.
But
he's going first round.
I wasn't going with Odunze. I was going with was a McMillan.
McMillan's good too.
I mean, so
wide receivers is stacked in Washington.
Yeah, so I mean, McMillan and Polk are guys that, frankly, you could see in the second and third round. And frankly, maybe what we should do is do the second and third round together, because guys that we think are in the third round could easily slide into the second round. Like, that's just how deep this class is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so, but McMillan is like he's different than the Odunzes and the and the Polks. Like, McMillan is just more your like your slot receiver, and I feel like here's a case where like those guys matter in the NFL, still to a lot of offenses, and so here's a guy where like he put up a lot of numbers with that Washington team, and like he was the guy that probably relied more on the middle of the field, right? And of course with the Odunze and Polk, like, being maybe a little bit more your deep threats, McMillan was your guy that was the middle of the field weapon, right? Like, so I think that, a guy like that is going to be maybe a little bit, maybe more of a sleeper in that regard, because like people are going to be so much maybe attached to like the Polks and the Odunzes that you kind of forget about a guy like a McMillan, as far as, being that first down creator.
So as long as we're talking about that topic and we're in the second round, can I bring a tight end into this conversation? Or are we doing this totally by position?
Why don't we?
I have another guy who's he's hidden by fantastic players in front of him, but could go in the second round. He's not a major sleeper because like people know about him, but I feel like he's overlooked. We can wait.
Who are you referring to the? Because we just recently talked about the Texas wide receiver core. Is that what you're? What? Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Jatavian Sanders, man. I love me some Brock Bowers, but if we can't get Brock Bowers at 12 and we can somehow get a second round pick, I am 100% okay with taking Sanders.
Yeah.
Dude, it's really easy to forget about him because Xavier Worthy and Adonai Mitchell are ridiculous. But he's like 6'4", 240 something. Just like an absolute just just monster of a tight end. He's not a good blocker, but if you want a guy who is going to be your go-to receiving weapon that we've been apparently trying to get at the tight end position here in Denver for a while and haven't really been able to hit it, even though we spent first-round capital on it, you could take Jatavian Sanders, what a first name, in the second round. And I think he's going to go, though. Like, I don't think he's asleep. I'm not saying people don't know who he is. He's probably the number 2 tight end behind Brock Bowers in this class, which is also kind of saying something like no one's in front of Brock Bowers. Like, Brock Bowers is another stratosphere, but Sanders is insane, and Xavier Worthy and Adonai Mitchell just make him kind of invisible.
So we would be remiss to mention a player that is, frankly, if Deebo Samuel, and it looked like when this was back when Broncos Danny was talking about Javon Baker, we would be remiss if we actually talked about a guy who is actually rather compared to a Deebo Samuel. And if you are talking about a player that, frankly, could slide from not necessarily the third round to the second round, but like the third round to the first round, just because of Deebo Samuel value, it's Malachi Corley. And if the 49ers are really true and they want to move on from a guy like Deebo Samuel and go with a much younger version of a Deebo Samuel, Malachi Corley is your guy. Like Corley is the guy to possibly replace, a guy like that. I mean, you're talking about like as far as just overall draft crushes between Javon Baker and Corley, like it is so close between those two because of like just their ability as like yak creators. And obviously Corley is like the guy, like the yak monster. One of the best like Broncos draft pick comparisons that I ever could really make for a guy like for a guy like that I could make for Corley. And this is going to make Bronco fans get a little PTSD from a past draft pick. But Carlos Henderson, man, like Carlos Henderson was the prospect. Like he was so fun to watch coming out. He was reliable. You threw the ball in his hands, he could go up and get it. Like he was also like he was gone too. Like he was able to just run after the catch and just make people miss. Like he was the ideal player, for the Broncos, and unfortunately just due to circumstances on and off the field, it never materialized. And but Corley is such a fun
two picks. You know who went 2 picks after Carlos Henderson, and I'll never forgive them? Chris Godwin. Anyway, I can't even take it. And then you don't even want to know who went after. You don't even want to know who went the pick after Jake Butt. Anyway, although I do love Jake Butt, so I wasn't mad about that one, but I was mad about the Henderson over Godwin thing. But yeah, Carlos Henderson had so much potential. Like I was hyped for him coming into the league. And bust. Sorry, but bust. Not purely because of NFL, like on the field stuff, but just as a pick. I'm sorry, like he didn't pan out, and it just hurts because he could have been an absolute monster. He could have been Debo before Debo.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
Maybe not. I don't think he had the same athleticism, but he was close.
So let's start including maybe some of those other guys. Now we'll start getting into some of those sleepers a little bit more. We've talked about Johnny Wilson at times a bunch. The tight end, possible wide receiver. With Florida State. But who actually? Well, let me say this: is there a wide receiver we did not mention, possibly within that group, that you feel deserves some nod, Jordan?
One wide receiver that comes to mind, and I know we don't hear this term a lot with wide receivers in terms of, being a project at that position, but just because he didn't play much in 2023, and I'm mainly going off of what I saw in 2022, but Devontae Walker from UNC.
Tez Walker.
Yeah, he could be a game changer if he goes to the right team and he learns from the right group of guys in that wide receiver room. Again, he didn't play much in 2023 because of that dumb NCAA rule. So he came in very, very late, and he showed flashes with Drake May towards the later parts of the season. But I know his route running, we didn't see much of it this year, but I'm going strictly off of 2022. I remember when that guy was getting talked about as going big time in the NFL.
Yeah.
And then not playing much hurt him in 2023, but I've seen him in a lot of top 60, top 80 picks in terms of mock drafts for Tez Walker. But again, I think he could be one of those guys that can be a sleeper for one of these teams that if you get the right group of guys around him, he can really shine.
I will say one that does certainly come to mind that we didn't get a chance to mention. That is actually, it's interesting. If you were to talk about maybe a wide receiver, in terms of frame, because we talked about Javon Baker's frame in the 6'1", 200 frame. A wide receiver we would be remiss if we didn't talk about, or maybe even as a possible Debo, Xavier Legette. Like, Xavier Legette, we would be remiss if we didn't mention about Legette. And, I think that, not to go too homerish here, but I feel like the Trey Palmer success story of him, playing so well with Tampa, I think is at least a nice cause for optimism for a guy like Xavier Legette. And here's a guy who truly only had one good, successful year of college. But when you actually peel back the layer, I was actually even listening a little bit more on another Brett Coleman podcast, and the story of Xavier Legette it kind of makes you cry a little bit and get emotional, because when you peel it back and you start to understand maybe why it was such a struggle for him in college, and to him to really hit the ground running, like he lost both of his parents at 17 years old. Like he lost both of his parents at 17. And then also in high school, he was switching positions from wide receiver to quarterback, so like from like almost like junior year to senior year, he was switching between quarterback and wide receiver. So you're not really even comfortable, so once you actually go into, a place like South Carolina and everything, like it's hard for you to get your wits about you. And so for you
here's something insane. Go ahead. go finish that first.
Just so in essence, to kind of like for Leggett, it's really impressive, and I think the thing is like he's such a very unique body type that it's just like if you were to go strictly off of body type and look at that wide receiver and just be like, that guy is a dude. Like that guy is an absolute monster. And I feel like one of the popular ones, that you certainly get a chance to see in that realm is, Carolina and possibly even Baltimore, right? Because I mean, we mentioned before about, Ladd McConkey and everything going to Baltimore, but like having a Xavier Leggett there, like would be phenomenal because like you have Zay Flowers, who is that creator, almost like they had Antonio Brown, if you will, for the Baltimore Ravens for that offense. But then you finally have a physical wide receiver, almost like the AJ Brown to a Devonta Smith, if you will, and I think that I'm not saying he's an AJ Brown type, but I feel like just the overall, way he goes about like his business as a wide receiver, it's different. And when he was at the combine, he needed to put up really good numbers, and he put up great numbers at the combine. And so much so that like it kind of took you by surprise. Like this guy, he runs different, man. Like he runs different than everybody. And I think that's one of those things, like you just know that there's players that just carry themselves way different, and you get that vibe with them. Like Leggett is one of those players that you should get a much different vibe with, that you just get the feeling he's going to be a very, very successful wide receiver at the next level.
Last year was the first year in his college career where he had over 30 targets. And he was there since the 2019 season.
That's crazy.
It's ridiculous. Obviously, there were a lot of extenuating circumstances with like him in general, but yeah, he's literally the player you make in Create a Character when you're making a wide receiver in Madden at 6'3", 230. That's just
actually
ridiculous.
He's like 6'1". Like I think they're giving a little too much credit. He's like 6'1" or like 6'2", but like he's built though. Like he's physically built.
He's yoked.
Yeah. Maybe this is a bit generous because this has him at 6'3".
For sure, I would say that's very, very.
Hold on.
I would love
what's his combine? Because that was just from
he put up numbers.
ESPN. No, I'm trying to find his height. Okay, they're saying 6'1". Good God, ESPN, where are you getting those 2 inches? He's 6'1". Still
blaming ESPN, the 4-letter network, right here on the Manely Broncos.
Wait, bro, go pull up his ESPN profile. It says he's 6'3".
No, but you're right. Like
still, I'm sticking to it.
But Jordan and I were in the predominantly orange chat earlier, and it's like I said, like if you were to take like, it's almost like a DK Metcalf body with like AJ Brown, like and funny enough, like both of those wide receivers were with like Ole Miss, and so that's the funniest part of this. But like just as far as size, like so it's crazy. Moving forward to let's just kind of lump now like the 3rd and 5th and 6th round guys now, just as far as like wide
skipping the 4th round.
Well, just as far as time.
Just kidding. All right, this is where I shine. These are my boys.
This is where you shine.
This is how I win. This is how I win.
Like the 40 minutes earlier.
No, this is what I prepared for, man. This is when you say sleeper, I'm thinking we're talking late picks.
Here we go.
We're talking the gyms. This is why I wanted to use this is how I win. Because gyms, anyway, people will get it. If you get it, you get it. All right. This was my guy that I wanted to save the reminds me of Cortland Sutton comp for, because we still don't know what's happening with Cortland Sutton. Cornelius Johnson from Michigan. Mm-hmm. It's really easy to forget about because they didn't really like Blake Corum was ridiculous. They didn't really pass the ball that much. And this is like kind of one of those things that JJ McCarthy kind of got some slander for, is like the lack of what they had him do in the passing game. But Cornelius Johnson, the only thing he's not good at is, well, okay, I guess two things, but they kind of go together. He's not that fast, and he doesn't have the best routes. But other than that, dude is an absolute monster and goes up and high points the ball. This is why I say it reminds me of Cortland Sutton, and there's more than just this. He goes up and gets it. I don't know if you guys saw them play Indiana, where he had that, it was like 60-yard touchdown, and he's like literally just draped by the defender, goes up and just like, it's not even that he jumps over the defender. Here's the defender. He goes up like, there's like a 5-inch difference. It's a ridiculous vertical. And then straight up high points the ball. It was overthrown. It wasn't a good throw. He threw it too high. Even if you could say like he threw it where the defender couldn't get it, it was still too high. But Cornelius Johnson went up and got it. He's a really good blocker. Courtland Sutton, I love Courtland Sutton, and I love how good of a blocker he is. I don't know if you guys remember this play from him in college at SMU, where he was like pretty much running down the whole field with his teammate, blocking and celebrating. It was incredible. Cornelius Johnson is an amazing blocker, and I love a wide receiver that's willing to block and good at it. You can use him on the outside, and he can go up and get the ball. You can use him in the short underneath stuff and the slants, and use him for his yak ability. And he's not super fast, but he's going to go get the football. And he is 6'3", 200 pounds. He's a good guy. He's a good wide receiver, and I feel like it's too easy to forget about him.
For sure.
So Brandon, do you think that there is more in the tank in terms of talent-wise with him that we haven't seen yet?
Oh, 100%. They didn't pass the ball nearly enough for us to see what he's probably capable of. I mean, I also don't think, again, I said he's not a good route runner. I also don't think he didn't run that many routes. Like they didn't have him do much. It's hard to become a good route runner when you only run like 4 routes.
Yep.
So we get into the NFL game, it's probably going to be a little bit of a learning curve. Maybe in the first year, I'm not going to say you redshirt him. Like he's good enough, you can play him, but you're going to play him in those 50-50. You're going to use him with Courtland Sutton. You're going to use him in the yak game. You're going to use him in the 50-50 balls. He's going to come down with them. He's not going to have a huge route tree, but you can build that up. Courtland Sutton probably be a great mentor for him. And again, we still don't even know if Courtland Sutton's going to be on the roster, which I hate. But if you want to look for a guy who's a similar skill set, and I know we have Tim Patrick, but Tim Patrick, I love you. Coming off of those 2 injuries, I'm almost saying you don't exist. I'm not, and I said that in the nicest way possible. What I mean by that is,
don't block
he's there, and I'm going to use him, but in no way, shape, or form am I betting anything on him this year. And I'm not even saying I think he's going to be bad. I think he's a fantastic wide receiver. I think he can go back to being exactly what he's been for us. I just don't know. Could it be halfway through the season?
It's just
could
hard
be
to say.
Further than that. I have no idea if he stays healthy. So I love Tim Patrick, and I know there's the Tim Patrick, Courtland Sutton similar skill sets, but you want a guy that can give you what Courtland Sutton kind of gives you if you don't want to keep Courtland Sutton around because you get a trade offer for him. And I'd love to keep Courtland Sutton, but Cornelius Johnson, come on down.
Well, and it's one of the reasons that I know that Jordan has seen this. We've had that conversation, Jordan and I, but it's like, if you want to replace Courtland Sutton or even Tim Patrick, for that matter, in this draft, you could do it. And granted, you could actually do it, and probably still keep Tim Patrick and Courtland on here, and then you move on, from them, even despite the addition of a Josh Reynolds.
Honestly, my next guy could fit into that too, actually, but I'll let Jordan go and you go.
Go ahead, Jordan.
No, but it's fascinating with the Cornelius Johnson one because, and I don't mean this in a bad way. Like my question mark with him is not a bad thing. It's more of I think there's just more talent that we haven't seen with him, and that's why I think
he's a kind of an unknown.
Yeah, and that's why I think personally that's why he's not in that 3rd or 2nd round projections. It's because we haven't seen a lot of them. But I think that could be also really good for any of those teams picking him up in those late rounds because, in my opinion, and I like that Brandon brought him up. I think he is a sleeper. He's a diamond in the rough type of guy. Again, you give him a year, maybe even 2 at best, and he can become a guy. And I like the Courtland Sutton comp too. But, yeah, we haven't seen enough from him, but I feel that he does have that in him. He really does.
He's a guy that you can get him probably in the 6th round, 5th round, 6th round later. You can get him late, and he's going to outperform his draft capital wherever you get him. Even if it's not right away, he's going to do it. And you can probably still get a good, you can get a good guy, a good wide receiver in round 3, and come back and get Cornelius Johnson, and those are your top 2 wide receivers in 3 years.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying you do that because there's other players on this roster that have those roles, and like Marvin Mims is incredible, but you could do it. They could become that.
Yeah. No, it's going to be interesting. And obviously we didn't get a chance to mention, obviously the one who was related, to the best wide receiver in all of the NFL in terms of, best wide receiver of all time. And that would be Jerry Rice's son, Brendan Rice, as far as possibly being, a Tim Patrick and or Cortland Sutton replacement. I think for me, you get a little bit later. One of the guys that I really do like, and obviously he's not a Tim Patrick type, he's not a Cortland Sutton type. 2 guys really kind of come to mind for me are Jamari Thrash and Malik Washington.
Malik Washington was going to be the guy that I wanted to say, but he's similar to Marvin Mims, and so I was like, but Malik Washington.
Yeah, he's fun. Malik Washington is fun, and Thrash,
he's just small. It's the only downside.
And I think the thing with Thrash is you have a little bit more size to him. Like a Thrash, you have a little bit more size. And
Thrash was built in the lab.
And he's a pure route runner. Like if you were to, I know Jordan is in the house, but if you wanted to replace a guy like a Jerry Jeudy and kind of make him, the pure route runner, if you will, and put him in the building, Thrash. He just also it screams wide receiver name, a very successful NFL prospect, name, with Thrash. But he's a fun prospect. I like how, and I think he's also very underrated in terms of how he can go up and get a ball, right? Which I think he showcased at the Senior Bowl. So I think the important thing that he showed at the Senior Bowl is he's not just a very minute route runner. Like he can go out and make those tough catches at its highest point. And frankly, it's one of the reasons why, not to lump him again, but Luke McCaffrey. It's what makes Luke McCaffrey such a fascinating one. Like truly, he's a fascinating one because here's a guy he's a go up and get it wide receiver. Like he made very, very tough catches at Rice. He played the position before, which is, if anything, helps you actually become a much better wide receiver, right? Actually playing the position before, knowing the different nuances and tendencies that a quarterback has. But also, he could be like a Deebo Samuel because the way that he is and intellectual that he is as a player, because we know that's just the overall McCaffrey family and the way that they're made. They are a high intellectual family. And so it's just, he understands the different nuances. And Lisa, even as far as maybe being the best athlete of them all, she even said, Luke may actually be one of the better athletes of that, of that family lumped into Christian McCaffrey. So I think that he's so fascinating. And I asked the question, for Jordan and you guys, even off record, it's just he's so fascinating because he can be lumped into those guys. And it's one of the reasons why I mentioned a Thrash, right? A Thrash and a Washington, because Thrash and Washington can go into that possible second round, but the third round, well, that's also the rounds that Luke McCaffrey could possibly even go. So having McCaffrey go from the third round to even the fifth or sixth round is just fascinating. And the reason why he would go in the fifth or sixth round is, well, he's not played the position all that often, right? And so that's just the unfortunate nature of it.
Now, when I name the sleeper, I want to know
if you pick my guy. Just gonna.
No, if we do have the same
if
guy,
you pick my guy, I'll be impressed. Actually,
all right. If we do have this is going to be insane. But I will be very surprised if you guys have heard of him because he did play at a small school.
Never mind.
Okay, so
it's not my guy's not a small school guy, so I'm curious.
He did play at Idaho, and his name is Hayton, which is a interesting name.
Interesting.
At least.
Don't be hating.
Hayton. Don't be hating on him. But
there's the memes make themselves. I want a draft of only the best names.
Well, he'd be the
strategy, but I don't even care.
He'd be wide receiver 1. So
give me McConkey and Hayden.
That's awesome.
McConkey and Hayden. Come on.
And Thrash. Yeah.
And Thrash.
Yeah.
Just it's too bad. Smoke Monday. Go get Smoke Monday from the Canadian Football League.
Steel Chambers. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm getting off topic.
Go ahead.
Tell us about Hayden.
So my guy Hayden, right? So he might be at best 6th round, 7th round. And I would not even be surprised if he doesn't even get drafted, if I'm being quite honest with you.
You got another fan.
Here we go. And Big Mike knows about him. 6'2", 205. And if anybody is a big PFF guy, we are very known of their grades can be very inconsistent. But I was first introduced of Hayden by PFF grades, and I always saw that he was one of the top ones. He was top ones in 2022 and 2023. So back-to-back years. So I had to see what was up. And the best way to describe Hayden, at least in my opinion, is that he has a similar skill set. And I'm not saying it just because they are both white, but Adam Thielen.
Okay.
Ooh, okay.
I think this is a perfect Adam Thielen comparison. Hayden has a very similar skills with him, I should say. And he is one that I don't think many people even know about. He's very good with the ball in his hands. He is not the fastest guy in the world. Neither was Adam Thielen. But hardworking guy, can get open, and he can make something out of nothing. And I'd be very, very happy if Denver can get him as an unsigned drafted player. Because if I'm being quite honest, I'll be very surprised if he gets drafted. But if he doesn't, I think Denver should jump all over this. And he could be that guy that could make that roster and continue that streak that Denver has of an undrafted player making the roster. So
don't look at this combine numbers.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you do look at the combine numbers, you'd be like, all right, what's going on here? But again,
what sorcery is this?
It would be almost like the Orlando Brown, treatment. Like, what did you just perform at the combine? But yeah,
that's cool. I love me some Adam Thielen, man. That's I gotta go look this guy up now. Adam Thielen is first of all, dude's ageless. He just had a 1,000-yard receiving season with the Panthers at age 33. God, I love Adam Thielen. Anyway, this guy sounds interesting. I'll look him up. Of course, Big Mike knows about him. Big Mike, hold on. You can never have too many elite wide receiver blockers. Okay, it's impossible. And we got to look this guy up because he's been shouting him out a couple times. I don't know. I've never heard of this Ryan. Do you guys know who that is? We got to look that up. Awesome. Cam, you got anyone? Because I got someone else.
I do. I actually do.
You're gonna steal my guy now. Just watch.
If we're in the business of talking about, I don't because they've been a really good school lately in college football. Like they've been a really good school lately in college football, but in terms of just school popularity and everything, they're not lumping them with the very, very popular schools, but I'd have to do a little bit more in terms of whether or not he's related to this particular wide receiver. But Joshua Cephas from UT San Antonio, he's one of those. I don't know if he's related to Quinton Cephas, the one that was from Wisconsin, right? But I think that he's a fun one because he's 6'3", he's almost 200 pounds. My guess is he's probably 200 pounds in terms of preparing for the draft now, and doing private workouts and everything. And so, but he's 6'3". You actually look at what he's been able to put together. He was reliable. Obviously, he's one that he's reliable in the short and intermediate game, but he was graded out really well in terms of the intermediate, the deep, as far as a deep threat. So he's one, if you're talking about maybe a project, and this is to the idea of hating, but a project that you can work with.
Don't be hating. I need this to happen.
Right? The size that he could work with and the nuances for a guy like a 6'3", 200 pounds, he's got a little nuance to his game, with Cephas. And I think that he's so fun. And much like Javon Baker, he put up elite numbers on that outside left, right? And like that outside left. And I mean, he was 12 of 14 from 10 to 20, for 265 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 0 picks thrown his way there. And then from 20 and beyond, 4 of 10, 130 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no picks. Both of those were graded at 90, like almost 90 plus. 10 to 20 was 99, and 20 above was 93.5. So I mean, like I think he's one that is definitely slept on. Obviously, with him going to UTSA, but if you are a college football purist and you obviously have been studying some of these prospects, maybe that's a name that has really resonated with you in terms of like, and maybe a player that they actually could go for. But yes, Joshua Cephas is one that comes to mind.
I was trying to find out if he's Quintez's brother, and I can't find it, but spelled the exact same way. So maybe.
Yeah.
All right. So my guy is a big school guy, but he's in that same camp of he's kind of easy to forget because there's people in front of him that are really good, and that's Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint at Georgia.
Wow.
Yeah, he's another one of those like
you're just going with the creative names. Okay,
I only want the creative. Cornelius Johnson is not that creative. And I'm sorry, Cornelius. I still want you in Denver. If you're listening to this, blame Cameron. But I mean, he would be in that. Give me all the wide receiver. Give me Thrash. Give me all the names. I just want the names. No, Rosemy-Jacksaint. Again, you're playing behind Brock Bowers, obviously different position, but like Brock Bowers is in front of you in the offense, and you have 2 running backs in this offense that scored. There's like 24 touchdowns total on the ground or something stupid. Like it's really easy to forget about him. He had 34 catches, but he had like 16 yards per catch. Dude just knows how to get open. He's a really, really good catch radius. It, again, kind of reminds me of Courtland Sutton. And I'm saying these for a reason. Like I'm not just trying to say replace Courtland Sutton. I like these guys that have the big body that are able to get out there and get the ball and have the athleticism to go get the ball and high point it and do the catch it outside the radius and keep it away from defenders and can get the ball. Because if you're going to have a young quarterback and have a rookie quarterback, that could potentially still happen. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Who's your best friend? A guy that you could throw the ball to. Doesn't even matter how open he is. He can find a way to get the ball. Brock Bowers fits in that actually as well. But because of Brock Bowers, people forget about Marcus Rosemy and Jacksaint, and they shouldn't, because he's a really good wide receiver, and bro makes plays.
All right.
He was also the same one that broke his leg.
Yeah.
So
he did. Yeah.
Um,
he could be that Michael Thomas, Mr. Slant.
Yeah,
Marcus Rosemy St. Jackson.
That's a good pick.
I want to keep wanting to say St. Jackson, but it's Jackson. Isn't the name, man? I want the names. Anyway, but he's actually a good player.
So let's kind of lump a little bit more of those players together that are sleepers now with some of those position groups like running back, tight end, and tackle a little bit.
I got running backs and tight ends.
Why don't you lead us off with running back?
You're talking to me. You're talking to Jordan.
I'm talking to you.
All right. So we'll do the this makes it more likely that my other guy's gonna get stolen, which sucks because I want to talk about him. But we'll do the merge. I'm gonna give you a guy who started out as a wide receiver and switched to a running back, and I'm gonna say the school he plays at, and Broncos country is immediately gonna get cold chills and say, don't ever, ever, ever again draft an offensive player from Memphis. But Blake Watson, the running back from Memphis, started out his career as a wide receiver at Old Dominion. Halfway through his freshman year, switched to running back, did almost nothing, but then blew up his sophomore year. Had it okay, fell down a little bit junior season, transferred to Memphis, and just blew it up. Dude had almost 6 yards per carry, 14 touchdowns, and after only having 10 catches his first year switching to running back as a wide receiver, bumps up to 50 catches out of the backfield. This guy can catch the ball. We know that this offense and this coaching staff, specifically Sean Payton, loves them a running back that can catch the ball. And I don't want to lean too much into the player that they used in New Orleans, because then that'll kind of give away my other pick. But they love a guy who can catch the ball out of the backfield, and Blake Watson, who started as a wide receiver, can definitely do that. But he's also just a really athletic player. Dude has breakaway speed. He ran a 4.39 40. He went actually to the Shrine Bowl. He didn't get a Senior Bowl invitation. He went to the Shrine Bowl, which is kind of a little bit forgotten about because everyone talks about the Senior Bowl, and they're around the same time. But he went to the Shrine Bowl and apparently had an amazing bowl and amazing practice. And Blake Watson, guy I could probably get late in the draft, and you can throw him the ball a lot, and he can be a sleeper running back. And yeah, he went to Memphis, but Paxton Lynch, who?
Well, my sleeper in terms of running back, and I'm not mentioning him. Wow, that is a heck of a comment.
Love you,
my
Mark.
sleeper for running backs, and not just because I know him and he's from South Florida, but Frank Gore Jr. can be something in the NFL.
Another guy who had a great Shrine Bowl.
Yep. And listen, I know I can be a little biased towards South Florida, especially if I know them. But I think in terms of player comps, I think a reasonable one for him could be a mixture Jaleel McLaughlin and Philip Lindsay, right? He doesn't have the height towards him, but he has great vision. And I feel like he could be a mixture of those two guys right there.
Okay. I was actually I was gonna go with one that is definitely kind of flying under the radar necessarily when you do mock drafts, or in terms of like just the lumping together of like some of the popular names that we've mentioned in the past. Guys like Braylon Allen, Will Shipley, Isaac Giriendo. But one of the names that obviously really comes to mind is Tyrone Tracy. Like, I mean, really, really fun running back. I mean, I feel like in terms of if you're going off of one of the more like underrated, backs in the sense of like that's like almost a complete back to a degree, and it's maybe one of the reasons why maybe he's flying up some of the boards now.
Didn't he used to also be a wide receiver? Sorry, wasn't he a wide receiver originally?
I can't remember if he was a wide receiver. They had him.
I'll look it up.
Or quarterback or something like. He definitely played like another position though. But yeah, he just 6'1", 210, like pretty decent size, right? I mean, you typically see him, a tick above that, about 5'11", if you will. We're right at 6 feet. But yeah, I really like his. I love the way that he is as a back. But yeah, Tyrone Tracy is one, and of course
he was a wide receiver.
And of course Marcus has to go with a Washington running back, Mr. Dylan Johnson. Which I mean, if you're going off of running backs and possibly I will say. The unfortunate injuries he sustained in that championship game, it's just it was so hard because it's like I don't think had he didn't get hurt and sustain that rough injury, you are probably talking him in the conversation with guys like Jalen Wright, Trey Benson, Bucky Irving, like possibly into that category.
So yeah. This guy's probably going to go a bit higher, but I was actually going to talk about Jalen Wright. And the reason I didn't want to say Alvin Kamara's name is because I didn't want people to piece together the Tennessee connection and guess it. But no, Jalen Wright is. We talked about the yards per catch of like in the FBS. What about the yards per carry in the FBS? Jalen Wright has the most of any running back. It's actually kind of insane because Jaden Daniels is in front of him as a quarterback. That's insane. But Jalen Wright is an incredible running back. He's probably going to go, like, I don't know if he's not this like late round. if you wanted to call that a sleeper, I don't think he's going to go super early. He's probably going to go like third, but that's why I'm saying he's not a sleeper, Boggins. Yeah. But I wanted to talk about him because I think he's an incredible athlete, and he didn't catch the ball a lot. And I'm like, I know I'm using the Alvin Kamara and Tennessee connection here, but he can't. They just didn't use him that way. They played against Alabama. Dude had 7 catches in one game. Again, he's not as much of a sleeper. Like Blake Watson is the sleeper. That's like the guy that I originally wrote down when we talked about sleeper running backs. But I just think Jalen Wright, I don't see him talked about a ton in terms of an option for Denver. He's probably a round 3, round 4 guy, but I do think Jalen Wright is someone that I wouldn't be mad if we drafted him, and he's a good good running back who can catch the ball. I don't know why I just said wide receiver, because I'm looking at my notes for Blake Watson, who used to be a wide receiver, but Jalen Wright is a guy that I would be happy to take. Not a sleeper, but good running back.
Jordan.
Well, if we do want to transition into tight ends real quick, I do have one that I actually learned from my good co-host at Broncos Ave, Amir Farrell. Tight end from Penn State, Theo Johnson. I mean,
Cam and I have talked about Theo Johnson a few times. We love that guy.
So I was first brought to this man's attention on the pod and looked up some stuff about him. 6'6", 260, which is insane. And it gets even better. He ran a 4.57. That is just that's a freak of nature right there.
You know what's crazy? That was his second 40. He ran better on his second 40 than he did the first 40.
So when we talk about like sleepers, especially for Denver, I would love a Theo Johnson in Denver. I mean,
Johnson's a good one.
Just as big as you can get, and fast tight end that could be developed into something great under Sean Payton. Give me that all day.
Yeah. It's so interesting because I feel like I'm actually curious, where he's going to fall into it. But I love, we talked about how there is a drop off between Bowers to Sanders, and then Sanders, big gap, right? But I do wonder about maybe how close to a certain extent Ben Sinnott is to a guy like, almost a Sanders, if you will, obviously into the Big 12, but Sinnott was part of a Kansas State team. And if there's actually a team and you look and figure out maybe if there is a Big 12 team that probably runs and operates their system like a Big 10 team, it's Kansas State. Kansas State is very, very physical. They are run heavy, if you will. And Sinnott proved to be like a pretty reliable run blocker and also a very reliable pass catcher. Like if you're going off of like truthfully, if you're going off of like an Adam Troutman replacement, for maybe just, and just a developmental player at that, Ben Sinnott is really a guy that I would be following away. So I'm curious about like how close necessarily it would be for, maybe not necessarily as close, but I feel like maybe it's a much smaller gap than maybe we are actually anticipating for a guy like a Sanders and a Sinnott. Because I think that, if you are talking about, players and stuff like that, I do think that Sinnott is going to be a fascinating one for Denver if they, as far as a target, maybe even, on that third round, maybe even fourth.
Yeah. I looked at him when I was thinking about Boggins. We saw your question. We just don't care. I'm just kidding. Wasn't it? I'm just kidding.
We love you.
We just know how much he loves to hype up his tight ends because we couldn't hear enough of who shall not be named, who now plays in Tampa. Wasn't it the guy from Washington?
Yeah, it was when Marcus was on
First name.
When Marcus was on Manly Broncos, it was all about, speaking of tight ends, it was all about Trey McBride and Cade Otton, and gotta say, Cade Otton is tight end 1.
Oh no, I mean the guy that ran the fastest 40 for tight ends this year was Washington.
Still though,
wasn't it? Yeah. Anyway, I don't remember his name, but it was Washington. I lost my train of thought. Oh, so my guy. Again, I don't know. I mean, I think he's still asleep. I don't think he's gonna go that early. But Tanner McLaughlin from Arizona. He's not a super.
So we are going with Tanner McLaughlin. As I was just saying earlier. Yeah, we are going with him, huh?
Did you talk about him earlier? I didn't hear anything. What?
I said, watch, you're going to choose like Taylor McLaughlin, and then sure enough.
I literally didn't hear you say that. Was that when I went to go get... We already talked receivers, Boggins.
Someone's behind the 8 ball.
Come on. Yeah, bro. You missed all about my Cornelius Johnson hype. Anyway, Taylor McLaughlin is not a very athletic dude, but this guy has the highest effort. I almost said most effort, but his highest effort I've seen in football. Like, he just absolutely goes out there and plays his heart out every single snap. He's a great receiver. He's not a fantastic blocker. He's okay, but he'll try. Like, he's a willing blocker. Like, you can coach it into him. He is 6'5", 244, so he has the frame to do it. But I think Tanner McLaughlin is a guy that you can probably take and use as your receiving tight end if Greg Dulcich doesn't pan out, or you're still worried about his injury history cropping up again, which sucks. But it just, until we see him actually play consistently, like, again, I'm going to say the same thing I said about Tim Patrick.
Yeah.
In that I just can't, I'm not betting anything on you because I just don't know. I said Polk, and then actually Jordan said McMillan, right? That's funny.
I said McMillan, but
or Cam said McMillan. One of us said McMillan, and I said Polk. But yeah, no, Tanner McLaughlin, fantastic tight end from Arizona. And again, I would not be mad if we drafted him. I want Theo Johnson, but I didn't want to pick him because Cameron and I talked about him like 4 times already.
Yeah, so to answer your thing, Jordan, you are in a safe space with Theo Johnson because we are Theo Johnson ball knowers like you guys over there.
Nice.
At Broncos Ave. As far as people that truly want to know this answer, it is Devin Culp. Yeah, that's
his name. Yeah, and he played for Washington.
Yeah, he played for Washington. He beat out Theo Johnson by point 10, right? Like, because Theo was 4.57, and then Devin was 4.47.
Dude, Washington skill players stacked.
Oh, 1,000.
It's insane. It's ridiculous.
And now DeBoer brings all those guys to Bama.
He just had to slide that other with Marcus right here.
The chat.
Yeah. And now
he's gone.
Now Boggins has left the chat. So if we see a viewer go down from where we're currently at to one below.
Sorry, Boggins. Sorry.
Yeah,
he's not sorry at all.
Anyway, I was gonna say I was gonna say another tight end for me that I feel like maybe isn't necessarily getting a lot of love per se, but considering I do watch a fair amount of Big Ten, would be Brevin Spain. Like, I think that he's interesting.
Get out, Boggins. Get out. Anyway, sorry, what?
Would be Brevin Spain, like the guy from Minnesota. He is like he's massive. Like, he's like 6'7". He is actually a willing blocker. A willing blocker, and that's basically everything that Minnesota was like priding themselves on with Muhammad, Ibrahim, and everything that their offense was all about. It's like running the football. They ran Ibrahim, like crazy, and so you really don't even hear his name much, hardly at all. I think he got picked up by an NFL team, but you really don't hear his name. But Spain is a guy that he's so big that at times his athleticism kind of surprises you a little bit because of his size. He's not to the degree of any of those other guys by any means, but I think that given with what he is, a 6'7", and you give him like a very offensive heavy team, the opportunity to work with a guy like that, develop a talent like that, he could be a very fascinating one with especially that size at 6'7", which is taller than Theo Johnson. Like, we're talking like just a tick above like that 6'6". So Bremen Spain is a fun one.
And I know we still have Troutman and Lucas Kroll, but I talked about the athletic receiving tight end. But if you want a blocking tight end, Tip Ryman from Illinois. That's all I'm gonna say. That's it. It's just a tip. Oh my god.
Give Cam an alley-oop right there.
Hey, just call up the LeBron James.
Anyway, his sophomore season when he first basically started playing for Illinois, he gave up 1 pressure and no sacks in pass protection. Last year as a senior, he gave up 2 pressures and no sacks while doing a hell of a lot more blocking. He's an incredible blocker. But if you're looking for a tight end that only blocks, because he doesn't really do anything else.
So we would be remiss, since we've talked about the playmakers, and
he is cruel, pretty much.
We would be remiss if we didn't actually, talk about some of those underrated, quarterbacks. And Boggins actually asked that question. We're going to be talking about some underrated quarterbacks. We would be remiss. We actually haven't gotten a chance to talk about some of those tackles just yet. But since you led it off first, Boggins, by mentioning quarterbacks, we might as well lead it off there. Jordan, I don't want to have too much of a Michael Pratt, Spencer Rattler discourse right now. But in terms of the top 6 to 7, right? And because Rattler and Pratt,
Penix isn't a sleeper. Boggins, get out of
here. I feel like between those two guys, and especially given, like from the Penix group downward, if you will, to the top 5 and stuff, you are talking about underrated in the sense of Michael Pratt and Spencer Rattler. So I will lead you. I will give you an alley-oop there, Jordan, to talk about your boy Michael Pratt.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say he's my boy. I mean, he's not like the one that I love the most out of this quarterback position. But in terms of having that discourse between Michael Pratt and Spencer Rattler, I would very much want Michael Pratt over Spencer Rattler. I just feel like he is more of a Sean Payton guy. And listen, I know there has been a lot of conversations about how the offense, whether it did or did not look like a Sean Payton offense with Russell Wilson. Well, I think it's time to look, no matter what the quarterback is, it needs to be a Sean Payton offense. Like, we need to get back to that way. I know it's kind of crazy saying back to that way, even though we've had him for 1 year, but you even heard Drew Brees talk about it. Like, the offense was not recognizable with Drew Brees and Sean Payton seeing it in Denver. So I think Sean can get back to his normal, good offensive ways with a guy like Michael Pratt, who has a good IQ for the game, who's accurate, and can be a guy that Sean Payton can mold into a Drew Brees type quarterback. I'm not saying that he will be one, but in terms of like his decision making, his poise in the pocket, his touch, he has somewhat of a average velocity towards with his ball. He doesn't have the strongest arm, in my opinion, but I think his decision making, his reading his progressions, I think all that makes up for it. And I think he can be the guy for Sean Payton.
Michael Pratt has definitely been linked to Denver probably the most of any later round quarterback.
Later round.
And I'm going to go next just because I want to see the look on Cameron's face when I 100% steal his guy. But also because we have Jordan here in the chat, I have to go with another Jordan. And Jordan Travis. Florida State. I was trying to make you think I was going in a different direction.
Oh, we were gifting that from
anyway.
We were gifted that.
Anyway, the Florida State hate aside, Jordan Travis was having an incredible year until he had the unfortunate, massive season-ending leg injury in like pretty much the beginning of the game against was it Northern Alabama, which like is a college that like I think almost everyone forgets about because of Alabama. But Jordan Travis is, I don't know if he's a Sean Payton guy because he's not really an anticipatory thrower, but he has a hell of an arm and he is incredibly athletic and he can make up for what he isn't as good at in Incredibles Generous. Yeah, shut up. No, he's a good athlete. But I think he's a sleeper quarterback for a reason. If he was a top 4 guy, we'd be talking about him like that, even with the injury. The injury is obviously going to be the biggest thing for him, just in general, in terms of workouts and medicals and everything. And it really sucks to see him have to come back for something like that. And I don't know if he's even going to be necessarily a starter, but I think you could take him and he could be maybe developed into one. He could be a very good backup if you're looking for an athletic quarterback that has a good arm. Jordan Travis is a guy you can get late because of the injury, and he's better than where you're drafting him. Is he Drake May? Obviously not. But is he better than where you're going to probably get him in the 6th round or 7th round or last pick of the draft? Yeah.
He's referring to obviously the 2 we mentioned earlier with wide receivers, with being Johnny Wilson and Keon Coleman, which was the guy that Jordan mentioned. But I think that it's interesting because if there was ever a quarterback, and I see Biggie Bronco mention Joe Milton. The problem with Joe Milton is he's a one-trick pony, and his big successful trait. His big successful trait is he may be the best deep ball thrower in this entire draft, and he may have of all
the that with Boggins in the chat.
Of
Screams and Michael Penix,
right? But of all the players that maybe has the best arm of the entire class, it's probably Joe Milton. The problem is that's all he does is he's a deep ball thrower. So I think if you were to give him to Miami,
well, they just extended.
No, I'm just saying, give him to Miami a little bit, and give him the chance to develop a little bit, and but I think that if you're talking
it's Josh Allen, but bad.
Yeah,
but it's bad. What a comparison! Oh
my god! But the thing that's crazy about Milton, though, is he was in a room. Don't quote me on this, but he was in a room with J.J. McCarthy and Dylan McCaffrey, I think, in Michigan. I think it was the 3 of them in Michigan. And obviously Dylan ended up transferring to UNC. And obviously J.J. McCarthy ended up being the starter. But he was in that room, and he was, I think, Michigan's starter for a point. He was a starter for a point with Michigan, and then they ended up going with McCarthy and even McCaffrey to a degree, and then the rest was history. He ended up transferring and went over to Tennessee, and so he at least had some of a professional coaching with Harbaugh. But unfortunately, if you don't make it with Harbaugh, that's actually bad. And bad on your record, if you will. But to Michael Pratt and Spencer Rattler, I think the thing that is, it's fun for me because what you described, Jordan, for me, and about timing and possibly work in the middle of the field at times. I think that for him, it's that's actually why I'm a little bit more intrigued with Rattler, and I think that I think also too he has significantly the better arm than Pratt, and I think if you are talking about a player that truly get the chance to mold and form into a quarterback that you want to work with, it would be Rattler. And I see Boggins in the chat and Jordan and Brandon, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but like, if I'm not mistaken, South Carolina had one of the few offenses in college football that also works a huddled offense. And so I think that benefits you as a quarterback in your development, especially a guy like Spencer Rattler, who has matured significantly. And by the way, this is for anybody that is in the chat that says, well, Rattler's not matured. Go watch interviews. Like, go watch interviews. Like, he is actually significantly matured and grown. And we're also talking about a kid when he was 18 years old, right? I mean, like, so the plan for us as we get older is to mature and grow. So I think for Rattler, there's just a lot, I think, in terms of what you could work with and the talent level that he could work with. That if Sean Payton could mold, not to trigger possibly 2025 talk, but if you could mold him into possibly like the Dak Prescott of the class, Rattler would almost necessarily be that guy. But I think
who else played for Oklahoma and then matured as a quarterback and person? Baker Mayfield. Anyway.
But I was just gonna say is that but to Pratt though, I actually don't love him, but I do like him, and I think that the reason why I like him is because it's one of the reasons why I like Jarrett Stidham in the sense if you're gonna roll with him for the year, I like the idea of him, rolling with that. And if you are going to maybe draft a guy that is maybe almost identical to a Jarrett Stidham and have him in the building, Pratt almost fits the bill. And I guess maybe to a degree, Rattler would as well. But I love the room with Pratt in that sense, if that's what you're going to view it as. And because Stidham would be perfect for that in terms of grooming a guy like a Pratt and work in the middle of the field. And the intermediate passing game for Pratt is actually may be one of the best in the class. The way that he is in terms of the intermediate game. It's pretty great. I do love the way he works the intermediate of the field, and he doesn't have, the greatest arm, but it certainly gets the job done. I will say this. I do find it fascinating when people talk about the strongest arm though. And I know I said Milton has the strongest arm. When they were clocking it at the combine, you had Milton at 62, McCarthy at 61, and Nix at 60 or something. So we're going off of strongest arm, and people are 2 mile an hour difference. So is there really, is there really much of a difference really at the end of the day?
Well, for me, I would just I'm not opposed to the Spencer Rattler idea to Denver. I'm really not. At the end of the day, if Sean Payton picks Spencer Rattler, I'm not going to be that guy on social media. So Sean Payton got it wrong, and I'm not gonna be that guy saying I know more than Sean Payton. If that's his guy, then I'm gonna roll with it. Yeah. I mean, but now if he picks Jordan Travis, I may be that guy on social media just to say that off the record. But again, I'm not opposed with I'm not opposed to the idea. Spencer Rattler was one of the best players coming out of high school for a reason. He was a top-rated recruit for a reason. He has the talent. He's been a bit inconsistent throughout his college career, but you mentioned Cam. He has matured a lot. He really has. You have to give it to him. Not a lot of quarterbacks will go through what he's been going through and what he did with his adversity and overcoming all the things that he had to overcome. So you have to give him credit for that. And listen, if that's Sean Payton's guy and he molds him into being one of the guys and being his quarterback of the future, then I'm all with it. I really am. But in terms of just in my opinion, picking Pratt or Rattler, I'd rather go Pratt. But again, this is only if we go in the later rounds. I'm still in the firm belief that we're getting a guy in the first round. Yeah. Whether we trade up, hopefully for Drake May or JJ McCarthy, or we stay put at 12, or even trade back if we can get a Bo Nix type of guy. So we'll see.
Can you give? Hold on, just a second. Mr. Brandon.
I literally said one word. Go ahead.
Jordan is a big believer in Bo Nix. So I want because Brandon, not to put Brandon truthfully on the spot.
What you about to say?
Jordan, give a 5-minute spiel to convince Brandon why the Denver Broncos
Hold on.
should draft Bo Nix.
Hold on. Let me add what I actually said. I don't dislike Bo Nix. Tell me why we should take him at 12, because I would not take him at 12.
So, okay, in terms of that standpoint, again, I shouldn't be the one to be convincing you, but I would say in terms of taking him at 12, listen, I am in agreement with you that maybe not the guy at 12. Maybe that is a little bit too high for a guy like Bo Nix. Like, I think best case scenario for Bo Nix to Denver would be trading back in the first round, getting some more capital and getting him around the 20s, maybe around there. I think that's
I'd
the
take
best
him at like 26, 28.
Yeah, mid 20s, maybe even early 20s if Sean Payne is that much in love with him. Because again, if Sean Payne knows that's his guy, we just gotta roll with the punches. We really do. If that's his quarterback that he wants and that he believes is the guy, then I'll be with it. But again, I think at 12 is a little far-fetched. I know I've seen those mock drafts of saying that he's going to 12. It doesn't get me irritated, but it's like we're reaching. That could be a really – I can see the social media.
If Olu Fashanu falls to 12, if you're telling me I'm picking between Olu Fashanu, Brock Bowers, and Bo Nix, we take Bo Nix.
Or even Fatanu. Like, I mean, if Fatanu was there at 12, yeah.
I'm riding.
It's tough.
But why do you like? Why
do you like him?
Yeah, why do you like him? Like him?
So I mentioned this earlier on.
Do you like him?
So, well, so with Bo, like the reason why I like Bo Nix as a prospect and why I think he can have a lot of success with Sean Payton. Sean Payton always those guy Bill Parcells and every single thing that he has done. That's his mentor. Everybody knows that. And the golden rules that Parcells has had when evaluating quarterbacks has always been the amount of games they've played in college, the amount of starts, completion percentage, and winning percentage. And if I'm not mistaken, the games played is over 30.
Does he have like six? I think do you have like 60?
Oh yeah, Bo Nix has 61, but I'm just saying like in terms of
okay. Oh, like for what they targeted, okay.
Yeah. So what Parcells, which is Sean Payne's guy, what he targeted was 30 games played with at least 23 started.
Yeah.
A 70 or 80% winning percentage, somewhere around that, and his completion percentage being pretty high. So all the benchmarks that Parcells did list out and that I've read, Bo Nix hits every single one of those categories. And that's why it makes me to believe that if Sean Payne still and does follow those benchmarks in evaluating quarterbacks, which I do believe he does, Bo Nix will be one of his guys. Now, depending on where we pick him is a different story. But in terms of hitting those benchmarks and then seeing what we saw at Oregon, I think he could be a very good quarterback under Sean Payne.
Yeah.
I don't hate him. I just hate him at 12. So if we trade down, I'm more okay with it. But to go to the Spencer Rattler, Michael Pratt talk for a second, I think Michael Pratt is more of a Sean Payton guy. I personally like Spencer Rattler better. Mostly because I just think Spencer Rattler has the physical ability. Like he has a higher ceiling to me. You can mold him into whoever you want him to be. Still, like he could be a
Kirk Cousins, almost like a Dak Prescott,
with a better arm.
Yeah.
And actually, hold on. I'm not going to say I started this, but I want to ask you guys a question. Speaking of what Cam just said, but let me get there in a second. I do think
into this.
What's that?
Don't you dare bring 2025 into this.
No, I'm not. I'm not. What was I saying? I think Michael Pratt is more of a Sean Payton guy. I just prefer Spencer Rattler. I think Spencer Rattler has a higher ceiling. And I think you can get him in the same area. Hell, take both of them as long as you're not starting our current starter. I'm not even gonna say his name because I don't want to associate him with being the starter.
We love you, Jarrett.
Wow.
We love you as a backup.
Seems like Brandon's a big fan of
Sorry. As a backup, I love you, Jarrett Stidham. But you played 5 games. You won like one of them. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh, would you trade number 12 for Dak Prescott tomorrow?
Wow.
You are going 2025. I hate it.
No. Trade him. Trade for him. Don't sign him in free agency.
But you're
Is
still.
that all it's going to take?
I'm going to have to give him a couple more things, but they're clearly not going to keep him. They don't want to extend him.
The problem there is the moment you trade for him today is the moment you are, in fact, having the exact same conversation that you had with Russell Wilson.
But Dak Prescott's good.
But you're still having the exact same conversation in the sense of you traded for him and you will have to extend him at that point. Like you will. But you will have to extend him. The problem here is
if you sign him in free agency next year, guess what? That's an extension. He's a free agent.
The point is though, like it's just I think that like I've got nothing against Dak and for what it would be for Sean. I am of the like and I think that one of the biggest proponents for Dak and why he would be successful here is, well, just you don't need to look no further than the coaching staff. You would give Sean Payton the opportunity to work with Dak Prescott, unlike Mr. Let's not use clock management, Mike McCarthy, over there with the Dallas Cowboys. So you actually are going to give Dak a much better coach, if you will. But the thing is like, I want a young quarterback that we can work with. I think especially in this league now in the NFL, there are just young quarterbacks that are running rampant, successful young quarterbacks that are running rampant in the NFL. And I want one of those guys. Like I want.
Yeah, but if you can't get, you're not going to get Williams. If you can't get May or JJ and you're at 12 and okay, Bo Nix is there, or you could trade it for Dak Prescott.
Wow. I mean, is
there someone in 2025 you like better? Because I don't. And obviously there's a whole season. Like this, you can never know, but because then they can get something for him. They can get a borderline top 10 pick for him when they can also just let him walk next year and get nothing because they clearly don't want to extend him.
Well, what's your answer, Jordan?
They're basically picking a quarterback with number 12. It's just not a quarterback from the draft.
I mean, I'm still thinking about it, Cam. Like, it's a heck of a question. I got to give it to Brandon. Like, I'm
I didn't come up with it. I saw it somewhere on Twitter once, and I wanted to ask you guys about it.
Maybe I just got to take some time to think about it. It's just it's hard.
It's wild to you got to think about it this much. I'll be honest. I would do it.
Well, it's just hard.
I get it.
No, it's just maybe I got to take some time and think about it a little bit more. But it's just
you're still gun shy from. I would be too.
Yeah, it's like I'm gun shy about it because I mean, obviously, you would almost go down the Russell Wilson model of the extension. Bring him in, extend him. It's different. It's different in the sense of like free agency because it's like you're not extending him. You're just signing him to your big money deal. But then here you trade for him. He's already got 1 year left on his deal. So you're almost going to have to like extend that. And,
you're getting him a season sooner.
Right. But I mean, like, it's just the difference of like extending him off of that. And so that's why it's the similarity with Russell Wilson. And that's why I'm a little bit more gun shy on that.
Sure. It's probably also the trading the capital that comes with it too, that you're losing as well.
Yeah. So, but again, like, I don't know. And I understand people's reservations too about Dak in the case of, he chokes in the playoffs and so on and so forth like that. But it's like, you also have to, again, attribute who is coaching, who is head coaching, who his head coach is. And like you give him Sean, and we know that Dak is a very good, pre-snap quarterback. And also he works really well with his process and timing. He'd be great with Sean. But it's just like, I really, and again, maybe I just need some more time to think about it. I really just want my young quarterback. So maybe Maybe if it's just the whole Bo Nix conversation, I probably would lean more to Dak Prescott, obviously.
I mean, that's probably the conversation. Let's straight up.
But if you are confident enough that you're trading up for JJ or May,
you're giving up way more to trade up, though.
I would probably trade up more, probably for the young quarterback, though. And I don't know.
You have to trade up to 3, and you have to give them 12, next year's first, and a player, and probably next year's second, and maybe more. Would you still do it? It's probably trade up to 3 for this. And I don't even think.
Good question, though, because
New England's going to trade down.
You think Dak would cost that much?
No, I'm saying that's how much it would cost to trade up to get one of these quarterbacks.
Oh, okay. I thought that.
As let's say Dak is, you just trade 12th for him.
So this is what's going on in my tiny little brain over here. I am thinking of when we trading for Dak in terms of like if our roster was constructed properly around Dak right now, I think I'd do it.
Why do you say it isn't?
Right now, I have no faith in our receivers right now. I really don't.
No faith in Cortland Sutton and Tim Patrick?
I don't. Again, I think we talked about Tim Patrick
and Marvin Mims.
The injuries.
Tim, I understand, but Cortland Sutton's good.
I like Cortland Sutton. I like Cortland Sutton, but as of right now, him being the only guy that Mims. I like Mims too. I think right now the only one I trust
also,
right now is Mims.
The guy we just signed, whose name I'm totally forgetting for
Josh Reynolds.
Josh Reynolds.
I know everyone was excited about Josh Reynolds, but I mean, again, we need a difference maker in that room. I don't think we have that guy yet in the room. That's why I'm kind of just shying away from the Dak Prescott trade. But at the same time, since I'm a wide receiver junkie, especially for this draft, if you trade for Dak Prescott, we can just go absolutely.
You can go get 2 wide receivers, and with the rate that those are hitting on as rookies, one of them is probably going to be starter.
So that's why I'm also thinking about if we do trade for a Dak Prescott, you can go absolutely berserk in the later rounds and draft 3 wide receivers, get Javon Baker, Cornelius Johnson, and whoever we want, and make our dream team. So that's the 2 sides that I'm thinking about in that trade.
Anyway,
no,
pot stirred.
But no, it's a fascinating one to where like I could easily change my opinion in the next 5 minutes, like because yeah. So because again, it's got nothing to do with Dak, like as a quarterback and everything, like it's got nothing to do with him or even fit with Sean Payton. It's just yeah. So real quick, and we'll round out all of this, but like let's give one offensive tackle that we feel is underrated. And then we'll finish the show.
Jordan, you're the guest. You can start first.
Man, offensive tackles, I know everyone's in love with offensive tackles, especially in the first round guys. For at least in Denver's perspective right now, like our tackles right now, Bulls and McGlinchey. I don't know if Bulls. Would you guys put Bulls in that group of draft day trades if something were to happen?
We've actually had this conversation.
What do you mean by something were to happen?
I think, yeah.
Like you get an offer?
Yeah, no. Like if someone comes offering to Denver for Garrett Bowles, not only do you entertain it, but do you pull the trigger on it?
So this is something that Brandon and I've had the conversation of. And I'll bring up to what the conversation Brandon and I have said is like when this is actually even when we've done like mock drafts and stuff like that, like on the show. If the tackle is there and they take a tackle at 12, which has been some of the likely ones that, for when I did the tweet today, it seems like a lot of people feel like maybe tackle for them to go with at 12. If they do take it, I think immediately at that point, I'm having a conversation about trading Bulls. If
I'm not going after a quarterback and I'm okay with taking one of the tackles at 12, sure.
Yeah.
I'd do it. Do you know what I said? This is probably the best tackle class of almost the 2000s. It's insane. It's actually ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like you could Olufashanu, I'd take him at 12. Fuaga, I'd take him at 12.
Fatanu. Yeah.
Fatanu, you could take him at 12.
Alt, if he slides, take him at 12.
I don't think there's no way Alt slides, but if he does, take him at 12. Like, I wouldn't take Mims at 12. That's where I draw the line. But there's so many. There's so many.
Graham Barton.
You can trade. What do you think Garrett Bowles would get you?
Well, certainly not in my mock draft scenarios of, pick 38, for the Tennessee Titans.
Really? That's what you tried to get?
No, that's what the simulator, like if you actually, like in the Pro Football Focus simulator, if you actually put Garrett Bowles in the simulator and include 38, they do it based off of their Pro Football Focus value, to be fair. But you include that, like in 38 and stuff, like, for Garrett Bowles, more often than not, they will actually accept that trade. I think personally, you're looking at probably a third, maybe even one of maybe your fourth. Personally, I would probably lean more to your fourth round pick, maybe, or a fourth round pick necessarily, not necessarily anything that's obviously fifth and beyond, maybe a fifth, but like
you can get a fourth. I think you can take a fourth. You can package some other picks, move up to the second round, and get his replacement.
Yeah. Do you feel the same way, Jordan?
Yeah, I do. In terms of I know he won't replace Garrett Bowles immediately, but I am a big believer in Alex Palczewski. I think he can be someone. But in terms of the draft, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but Blake Fisher from Notre Dame intrigues me.
Yeah.
6'6", 310, good size, good frame. So he's the one that stands out to me. But again, we just don't know what's going to happen. I just have this weird feeling, weird suspicion now, draft day. One of either Garrett Bowles or Cortland Sutton is going to be traded on draft day. I just have a weird suspicion about it. I don't know why. It's just a feeling.
Could even be both. It could even be both. Like, I mean, it's just the way that the offseason has gone. And again, like, it's not so much that we would like to see the career being developed with Sutton and Bowles with Sean Payton in Denver. Like, we would love to see it. But unfortunately, the class and everything that is with this, wide receiver and offensive tackle, both of those classes are exceptionally deep in this draft class. Yeah. And if you want to replace them and replace them with youth, I mean, Jordan Morgan, if they're able to get
Jordan Morgan's my guy, is what I was going to say.
Like, if you're able to get a second round pick and it's a front of the end second round
That's pick, exactly what I was thinking of when I said what I said.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, and if you're able to get me, and you said it numerous times, Brandon, like the perfect Bowles replacement, like he is that guy. And,
the Bulls we have this at home Bulls replacement version. The discount Bulls replacement is Patrick Paul from Houston.
Yeah.
Not as athletic as Jordan Morgan, but in terms of a super athletic, nasty streak tackle, Patrick Paul.
And the other thing is, I'm thinking of also like later round, and this is the conversation that I think that Brandon and I have said numerous times, Jordan, but like I would not even be opposed, given the lack of capital or whatever we've had. I wouldn't be surprised if they double dip on both positions in this draft. You double dip on tackle and you double dip on wide receiver. So when I bring up like a tackle like a DeMar Glaze or even a Carson Barnhart, like those type of players,
I just all I want in life. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I want Delmar Glaze to pancake someone, and I want to say that guy got glazed. That's all I want. Continue.
But like, I just think that if you look at what Sean Payton or maybe even just Streif is always prioritized, and frankly, I should just say the Broncos in general have always prioritized with offensive line, is this idea of, just versatility. And you look at Glaze and you look at Barnhart, both of them have versatility. I think Glaze all in 2023 was at left tackle or right tackle. And then he played, I want to say it was both left tackle and right tackle in 2022. And then Barnhart was roughly the same way. He did left tackle, right tackle. He played some guard, and also he was with Michigan too. So that there's some developmental traits there that you could work with and possibly bring in. And so let's just say you do draft a JJ McCarthy. We know that Sean Payton has prioritized connections this offseason, bringing in the Texas, safety group, bringing them together.
Connections. Give me JJ McCarthy and Cornelius.
Right, but JJ and Cornelius or JJ and Roman Wilson, if it's actually can work out that way, or if they can push comes to shove and you're able to get a Ricky Pearsall with the connections of Kiri Colbert. So I mean, I just think that DeMar Glaze and Barnhart are probably two specific ones in later rounds that I'm kind of eyeballing.
I like it.
So, all right.
Patrick Paul was my guy, and Jordan Morgan, but Jordan Morgan's probably a bit earlier.
Yeah, just a little bit. I feel like some mid rounds would be Dominic. I don't want to say phonetically, but Dominic Puny from Kansas, and
Chris. He's 6'5", 320. His last name is Puny.
Christian Jones from Texas. Some of those, mid. Actually, I was surprised you'd even mentioned your other guy, Matt Gonclaves.
Matt Gonclaves is another one.
Yeah.
If we didn't just sign, what's his name, Drake Nugent too, from Michigan, would be a guy I'd want. I know that's more interior center, but we signed what's his face.
So we're winding out a little bit.
His name I'm forgetting.
But and I think I may have posed this in our PO chat or whatever. But do you guys think they add a center? And if they do you guys think that they added? Maybe not necessarily in the first couple rounds, because I'm not necessarily suggesting they go draft, Jackson Powers Johnson. I'm not suggesting that. But do you guys think they go take a Drake Nugent, a little bit later, or a Taylor, Bertini from Washington, or do you guys think they address center a little bit later, or is it because of who they added? And actually, was it today they signed Sam Mustipher?
Sam is that's what it was.
In my opinion, I don't think so.
I don't think they do now.
Yeah, I think they have a lot of confidence in Alex Forsyth, as I do as well. I was a big believer in him.
I like him.
And if he doesn't work out for some reason, I think they'll just look towards a more of a veteran presence, like in a free agency type. So I don't think they address in the draft.
Yeah. Didn't who was that other guy that we signed who also played for the Saints? Who came out of Oregon, I think.
Oh,
Throckmorton. Didn't he play center at Oregon too? I'm pretty sure he did. I remember looking at him coming out of Oregon. I wanted to draft him.
It was probably a guard, if I'm not mistaken, because Forsyth he played with Forsyth, so I would imagine
That's right.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. I really kind of like how we took a little bit more of a deeper look into some of the offensive prospects. I really like that we'll probably end up doing this with the defensive sleepers. Possibly to look at, because who knows, the Broncos may actually surprise us all and take a cornerback at 12. So maybe but hey, we'll look at Biggie. I did see that you did mention a defensive prospect. We'll look at those a little bit later, and we possibly have a big guest lined up for April 17th show. So stay tuned to that. We'll be teasing that and announcing that the week of. So again, stay tuned to that. Jordan, it's always a pleasure, man, having you be a part of this show. And thanks for taking a deep dive, obviously, into the wide receiving group. It's so easy to get wrapped up into that wide receiving class because it is so deep. And again, make sure you tune into all the work that he does, not just over there on, Broncos Ave with the terrific people of J-Mac and Amir Farrell. So make sure you tune into what it is that they do over there. Really a fantastic podcast that they got going on over there. One of the best decisions Jordan ever made was joining that Broncos staff. He and I had that conversation more often than not. But he also does work over there at Predominantly Orange, so go check out what he does, because he just might have an article be coming out about that Bill Parcells model that he talked about, in terms of the quarterbacks, and possibly him maybe even being interested in a Bo Nix or, some of those, seasoned veterans, if you will, coming out of college. So again, stay tuned to that. And Jordan, it's always a pleasure, man. Like I said, it's always a pleasure having you be a part of the show.
Hey, I always love doing this, talking to you, Cam, talking with Brandon. This is always awesome, especially now during the draft. There's so much to talk about. So I always love being on. I always love being on with you guys, talking ball, talking anything about football, Broncos related. It's always a pleasure. So, I have all the love for you guys.
Feeling is definitely mutual. We'll definitely have
to having you on.
We'll definitely have to do this after the pod. Maybe reconvene. Maybe give our own grading system of how the actual Broncos, did in the draft, and maybe at that point we can get a mirror, on the show. But Jordan, thank you again for hopping on, and for Brandon, make sure you follow him at Brandon Miller PO. You can follow Jordan at Jordan T Lopez over there on Twitter. You can follow myself at Cameron Parker PO, and the show handle for Manely Broncos at Manely Broncos. And make sure again to subscribe to the MHRT network over there on YouTube, and make sure you hit the like button and tell your friends, and have your friends tell your friends' friends all about the MHRT network and the Manely Broncos podcast. Again, thank you.
Tell your siblings.
Much.
You forgot the siblings.
That's right, and siblings.
And your siblings' friends.
And your downstairs roommate. Make sure
we'll just keep going.
Yeah,
and your roommate's dog.
Right, exactly. Make sure you tell them all about Broncos Ave and Manly Broncos, and tell them all about those really good podcasts out there. So thank you guys so much for hopping on for a great show of the Manely Broncos podcast.
Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Tempo's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast's racking up the flame out. So high, I might never come down, so